Ever have those really fuzzy memories from when you were a kid, like maybe elementary school?
Oh yeah, definitely. Fleeting images, right?
Exactly. Maybe being pulled out of class for like a special program, GATE, GT, TAC, whatever it was called.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember it super clearly, or is it more, I don't know, just bits and pieces, like weird snapshots?
That feeling, that sort of fragmented memory around these gifted programs, it's actually really common based on the material you sent over.
Right.
And that's what we're diving into today. We've got these YouTube transcripts, people sharing their own stories, plus some pretty deep research from the creators.
Yeah, firsthand accounts, people who are actually in these programs, you know? And then these timelines the creators put together, drawing some, well, pretty interesting connections.
Definitely.
So our mission, I guess, is to look at these common memories, dig into some of the less conventional ideas about government links, maybe.
And trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
Offer a clearer picture without just, jumping to conclusions.
Okay, so let's get into it. The shared experiences, what jumps out right away is how many people remembered the same weird stuff. Not just like harder math problems.
Exactly. It goes way beyond just accelerated academics.
Like that string test. Did you see that? The tangled, colorful string?
Yes. So many people mention that. Having to untangle it sometimes physically, sometimes just in their head.
Yeah. It's strange how that specific thing stuck with so many people. Like it meant something.
Well, it could be about problem solving, maybe. Or how kids handle frustration with a weird task. It's definitely notable how often it came up.
And not just the string, flashcards, memory games, speed reading came up too.
Standard gifted program stuff, some of it.
Maybe, but then the tangrams, those colored shapes, people seem to have really strong memories of those, like spending ages on them for tests.
Right. Tangrams point towards visual spatial skills, right? Which makes sense for gifted testing, but the intensity people remembered.
Yeah, it suggests maybe a particular focus on assessing or, who knows, even enhancing those specific skills. Then there was the audio stuff. Those weird retro headphones.
Oh yeah, the big clunky ones.
Yeah.
Gray or greenish.
Mhm.
Sometimes hooked up to like a briefcase.
Totally. And listening to tones, frequencies, clicks during stories, and having to press a button when they heard a specific word.
That's quite specific, isn't it? Listening while processing a story and having to react. It could be testing auditory processing, attention, maybe filtering information.
And sticking with the retro vibe, the computers. Super old computers, people call them.
Playing Oregon Trail.
Yes, that one came up specifically.
Even if the tech was old, using computers suggests they were maybe tracking how kids solve problems digitally. Another data point, perhaps.
But it wasn't all tests and screens. There was building stuff too. Random things like toothpicks, popsicle sticks.
Construction paper. One person really remembered the construction paper project.
Right. So creativity, resourcefulness, making something out of basically nothing.
Could be. Testing divergent thinking, practical skills.
Okay, but then it gets weirder. The glasses. People remembered wearing weirdly colored or tinted glasses.
Like old 3D movie glasses, sort of.
Yeah. And it seemed to leave people feeling a bit unsettled.
Colored lenses. That could be about visual perception research, how different light affects senses, maybe even moods or cognitive states. It's unusual for a standard school setting, definitely.
And the rooms. People remembered being in very small, weird rooms, sometimes no windows or covered windows.
Or even trailers outside the main school building with blacked out windows.
Yeah. Not your typical sunny classroom.
No. Those kind of controlled, isolated environments, they do make you ask, why? What needed that kind of setting?
And field trips, not just the fire station. People mentioned local businesses, talking to CEOs sometimes.
Okay, that's a bit different.
And then military bases, aquariums, planetariums came up a lot.
That mix is interesting. Exposure to careers, sure. But military bases, planetariums, maybe observing reactions in stimulating unfamiliar places. That military link is interesting given later points.
And this last one is just odd. Drinking a weird liquid from Dixie cups.
Reddish, pinkish, purplish. People weren't sure.
Yeah, and lots associated with like dental stuff, fluoride treatments.
The fluoride connection is definitely something that gets picked up later.
Yeah.
But yeah, on its own, just a weird shared memory of drinking mystery liquid. What was that?
Exactly. So, okay, we have all these shared kind of strange experiences, but then one of the YouTubers took it a step further. They listed these weird character traits that people from GATE programs supposedly often have.
Right. This is where it moves from activities to, reported personal characteristics. And yeah, some are quite unconventional.
Let's run through some. A prominent occipital bun, that bump on the back of the head.
Okay, physical trait.
Heterochromia, different colored eyes. Being male and firstborn.
Demographic patterns.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Then it gets stranger. Near-death experiences, specifically drowning.
Wow.
Later recruitment by intelligence agencies. Paranormal stuff, UFOs, telepathy.
Right, the psychic angle starts coming in here.
Childhood memories of floating or levitating, lucid dreams, astral projection, out-of-body stuff.
Okay.
Suppressed memories triggered by odd things, forehead scars, migraines, weirdly lenient run-ins with the law.
That's a very specific one.
Premonitions, predictive dreams, being contacted by Mensa, feeling different, very self-aware. RH negative blood type.
Another physical marker, potentially.
And hearing weird frequencies or static. It's quite a list.
It is. And it's crucial to say this is all self-reported anecdotal stuff from online communities, right?
Yeah.
There's no big scientific study proving gay kids have more forehead scars or RH negative blood.
Right, absolutely. It's just what people who were in these programs are saying they have in common.
But the fact that these patterns are being reported by people with that shared gait background, it's curious, especially alongside everything else. That mix of physical things, personality stuff, and these really unusual experiences is striking.
Totally. And that's the jumping off point for one creator's historical timeline, trying to connect the dots between gifted programs and, well, bigger government projects.
Yeah, trying to build a context. Possible motivations, connections.
So they start back in the 40s, Operation Paperclip, bringing German scientists over after the war.
Some of whom specialized in behavioral science, psychology, that kind of thing.
Which could be relevant, right? Research into human behavior, potential.
It's documented history.
Yeah.
Then the 50s, MK Ultra, the CIA's mind control research program.
We know about that: hypnosis, drugs, sensory deprivation. They even looked into psychic phenomena as part of it.
Right. The declassified files show they were exploring all sorts of ways to understand and influence the mind. And that psychic angle within MK Ultra, that's a potentially key link to some of the weird experiences people report.
Then Sputnik happens, late 50s. Big panic about falling behind the Soviets.
And boom, the National Defense Education Act.
Directly linking education funding to national defense, pumping money into identifying gifted kids.
It clearly shows the government saw gifted kids as a national security asset, a resource to cultivate for technological and defense superiority.
Then the 60s, Project Talent, huge study. Psychological profiling of hundreds of thousands of students.
Led by a psychologist who worked on selecting pilots. Interesting background.
Yeah, the video suggests this could have been a massive screening tool, identifying traits useful for intelligence, defense.
Well, they collected a ton of data. Cognitive, social, psychological profiles. It certainly could have been mined for patterns interesting to certain agencies.
70s, Project Stargate, CIA, Army, looking into ESP, remote viewing for spying.
And this is when a lot of these gate programs were really active, doing those memory tests, the sensory stuff.
Yeah, the timing lines up. And some creators argue those date tests felt kind of like psychic screening.
The timing is interesting, and Stargate's focus on things like remote viewing. There are parallels, at least thematically, with some of the testing people remember.
80s, the Jacob Javits Act expands gifted ed funding again, maybe tying it even more into national goals.
And you also see NSA, DARPA getting really focused on STEM for gifted kids, building pipelines for cyber defense.
It reinforces that link, doesn't it? Education initiative running parallel to defense agency interests.
It does.
So the video wraps this section by mentioning the declassified MK Ultra and Stargate docs and floats the idea. Maybe gifted programs were partly a covert screen, looking for kids with potential for intelligence or defense over decades.
Again, it's speculative. It doesn't mean every kid was flagged for spy school.
Of course not, but it raises questions, right? Especially with people having trouble remembering details. Why the fuzziness? What were the underlying goals?
The combination of the weird experiences, the potential historical links to government mind consciousness research, and the spotty memories. It's intriguing, to say the least.
Which leads us into what one creator called Crazy to Crazier, very personal stories linked to the Gateway tapes.
Ah, yes, Robert Monroe's work. Audio tech aimed at inducing altered states, out-of-body experiences, that sort of thing.
So this person remembers having nightmares as a kid in Gate, hearing faint voices, and those memories apparently came flooding back years later when they used the Gateway tapes, specifically when they felt like they were nearing an out-of-body state.
Wow. So a direct subjective link for that individual between the Gate experience and the Gateway tapes effect, that's a powerful personal anecdote.
And then it gets even wilder. an alleged alien abduction experience during a gateway take session.
Whoa, okay. Yeah.
And the claim is during this experience, they went through psychic association tests that felt exactly like tests they remembered from GATE as a child.
That's an extraordinary claim, obviously outside conventional science.
Mm-hmm.
But the person perceives a link between that alleged event and their GATE memories. That's part of their story.
So based on all this creator offers their opinion, and they stress it's just their take for entertainment.
Right. Important caveat.
That GATE was basically designed to spot kids and maybe nudge them towards roles the government thought they'd be good at, the different experiences people had, maybe reflecting different potential uses.
It fits the idea of targeted identification, maybe sorting kids based on aptitudes for different pathways.
And the common thread for this creator is this fascination with psychic stuff. ESP, prediction, remote viewing, even talking to non-human intelligence.
And the idea that kids, maybe pre-puberty, were seen as more open to accessing these abilities or dimensions.
Yeah.
Well, we know government agencies were interested in psychic phenomena. Stargate proves that. So the idea isn't totally out of left field, even if the specifics are highly speculative. The notion of children being more receptive is also a theme in some esoteric circles.
Okay, now the second YouTube video we looked at had a related but slightly different angle on GATE, or trail, in Canada.
Right, this one focused more squarely on the idea that the main goal was identifying psychics.
And it proposed two categories. Category A, the kids who were seen as moldable, adaptable for a universalist agenda. Extroverted, agreeable, future global citizens.
Okay, so a specific profile they were looking for.
And category B, the ones who weren't so agreeable. And this video suggests these kids were maybe suppressed, mislabeled, put in special needs despite being smart, basically demoralized.
That introduces a much darker, more controlling aspect. Suggests an agenda to not just find talent, but maybe manage or sideline those who didn't fit the desired mold. That's a serious claim.
This video links psychic abilities to things like ESP, yes, but also just easily grasping complex ideas, strong intuition, creativity.
More general traits.
Yeah, and it mentions the SCI star model of giftedness, which actually includes creativity and intuition, not just raw IQ.
That's interesting, connecting standard giftedness models that look beyond IQ to these more intuitive or psychic traits.
And it lists all these characteristics often associated with gifted kids: high motivation, persistence, visualization skills, divergent thinking, trouble conforming, being sensitive, creative, maybe questioning authority.
Traits that often do come up in gifted literature.
And argues these are all signs of underlying psychic ability.
So basically redefining giftedness through a psychic lens, suggesting the program was looking for that constellation of traits.
Then it veers off again and mentions mutant bloodlines, connected to various groups, not just one. Feeling alien, having a deep knowing about people instantly.
Okay, that's heading back into more esoteric territory. Genetic lines, instant intuition, ideas outside the usual scope.
So shifting gears a bit, potential harms. Both videos touched on this. Memory loss comes up again.
That fuzziness, the inability to recall details, it's a recurring concern. If something significant or unusual happened, why can't people remember it clearly?
And the idea of suppression, that category B. If kids were mislabeled or put in the wrong programs, that could seriously damage their self-esteem, their whole educational path.
Absolutely. Risk identification in any educational context can have long-term negative consequences.
Then there's the term psychic netting, like casting a net to find these individuals and then what? Control them, use them.
It implies surveillance, potential manipulation, raises ethical alarms if the goal was to identify people based on perceived psychic traits.
And the fluoride again, the possibility of it calcifying the pineal gland.
And the link made to potentially suppressing intuition, the third eye in some traditions.
Right. Whether fluoride does that is debated, obviously, but the connection being made is part of this narrative.
It ties back to that weird liquid memory and the broader theme of potentially dampening certain abilities.
They also briefly mention indigo children or star children, suggesting maybe that whole concept was a way to co-opt or reframe the psychic discussion.
Potentially putting a different label or narrative onto these kinds of reported experiences or traits.
And one creator told a story about hair follicle testing near their elementary school, which was near a Superfund site.
Right.
They noted that some chemicals at those sites are neurotoxic, could affect the brain, maybe induce altered states, and wondered, speculatively, if that was somehow linked to testing for psychic potential.
That's a big leap, linking environmental toxins to psychic testing directly. But But it does touch on the idea that external factors, like chemicals, can affect brain function and consciousness. It's another layer of complexity.
Okay, let's circle back to the gateway process more directly. The tapes, hemisync, binaural beats, Robert Monroe's work.
Designed to guide people into altered states, right? Using sound frequencies to sync brain hemispheres, facilitate out-of-body experiences, access higher consciousness.
And it wasn't just him experimenting. He worked at the US military, intelligence agencies. The CIA was definitely interested. Declassified documents confirm that.
Yes, the Monroe Institute collaborated with government agencies. They saw potential applications for hemisync, possibly for things like enhanced learning, stress reduction, or remote viewing.
Which brings us right back to Project Stargate, the Army's secret unit investigating ESP, remote viewing.
Headed by figures like Ingo Swann, the father of remote viewing, developed specific protocols, training methods.
And the name's GATE program, Project Stargate, and the timing overlap in the 70s and 80s. It's suggestive, isn't it?
The parallel naming and timing are hard to ignore. Doesn't prove a link, but it certainly fuels the speculation that these things might have been connected somehow.
And then there's MK Ultra casting this long shadow, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, psychological testing, even targeting kids in some sub-projects.
The methods used in MK Ultra, at least as documented, do have some eerie echoes in the kinds of experiences people report from GATE. Isolated rooms, weird tests, psychological manipulation.
Yeah, and the idea that maybe personnel or techniques from MK Ultra got folded into later projects, like Stargate.
It all paints a picture of decades of government interest in manipulating and exploring consciousness.
So the big question, if MK Ultra was about control and Gateway was about expansion, what were they looking for by potentially mixing these ideas, especially with kids?
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? Exploring the limits of consciousness while potentially trying to condition or identify specific traits, it opens up some really deep and frankly unsettling possibilities about the goals.
And finally, that pink liquid, the fluoride memory. Could be mundane pepto, dental stuff.
Sure, Occam's razor.
But given everything else, the theories about fluoride and the pineal gland, calcification, melatonin inhibition, and the pineal gland being the third eye in so many traditions.
It adds one more piece to the puzzle, doesn't it? Another potential mechanism within this alternative framework for influencing consciousness or intuition. It fits the narrative being presented.
So wrapping this up, quite a journey, huh? From fuzzy childhood memories of gifted programs to, well, potential links with government research into consciousness, psychics, even mind control.
It's fascinating stuff. The sheer number of unusual shared experiences, the historical overlaps, the unanswered questions about what these programs were really about.
It definitely makes you think, doesn't it? If you were in one of those programs, do any of these stories ring a bell? What if there was more going on beneath the surface of accelerated learning?
Certainly food for thought. And if this has piqued your interest, looking into the history of MK Ultra, Project Stargate, maybe even the Gateway tapes themselves could be really illuminating.
Absolutely. Lots to potentially explore further.
For sure. It's a complete the government. They feel like these solid foundations.
Absolutely. They're just part of the background noise of growing up.
But what happens when you get older and you look back and there's this nagging feeling, like something about a memory, maybe from school, just doesn't quite add up.
That little flicker of doubt. Yeah, that sense that maybe a piece is missing from the puzzle. It's often where the really interesting stuff begins.
Exactly. And that's where we're headed today in this deep dive. One of you sent in some fascinating sources, and we've been doing some digging.
We have indeed.
We're going to explore a side of childhood education, maybe a hidden aspect that raises some, well, pretty surprising questions.
So we're drawing from two main YouTube sources today. First, we've got insights from Dr. David Snyder talking about the 6 laws of the unconscious mind. And second, there's an episode from the Launchpad podcast. This one features Jake Matthews. He goes by Jake Knows Nothing online, discussing his experiences and the whole phenomenon around gifted and talented programs. GATE,
yeah. So our mission basically is to try and connect the dots. We want to look at the common threads, these unusual experiences people in GATE programs reported, like Jake highlighted, and see how they might link up with these bigger ideas about the unconscious mind that Dr. Snyder talks about, and maybe even societal stuff.
Okay, ready to jump in?
Let's do it. Why don't we start with Dr. Snyder's ideas? The unconscious mind, memory. It's foundational stuff.
Good idea. So one of the core things Dr. Snyder says is that the unconscious mind always answers first. And it's honest, but here's the catch.
There's always a catch.
Right. Its truth is based on perception, not necessarily objective fact. what it believes happened.
So it's working off its own internal map, which is shaped by feelings, interpretations. It's not like a perfect recording, not at all. And he talks about these two big delusions we often have. First, we think our memories are real, like totally accurate playbacks.
Yeah, like watching a movie of the past.
But Snyder says no. Memories are reconstructions. They actually change a bit every time we remember them. They're constantly being sort of rewritten.
Wow. So that crystal clear memory you think you have, it might be more like a story you keep retelling and it shifts slightly each time. The past isn't set in stone.
Exactly. And the second delusion, believing our memories are us, that we are our past experiences. Snyder argues memories are things we've made based on experience, but they aren't the sum total of who we are. We're more than our memory files.
That's actually quite liberating, isn't it? If you understand that, you're not completely trapped by a past that might not even be remembered accurately.
Definitely. Now, here's where it connects in a really interesting way. Dr. Snyder talks about how experiences in childhood, especially ones that felt threatening, get logged by our nervous system as trauma.
Even small things, potentially.
Potentially, yeah. And these logged experiences can, really influence our behavior and feelings later in life, often without us realizing why.
And the unconscious mind, it actually tries to heal, right? So it pushes these memories, these unprocessed feelings up towards our conscious awareness.
It does, but our conscious mind, often it wants none of that. It wants to avoid the discomfort, so it pushes them back down. Suppression.
Creates a bit of an internal tug of war.
Totally. And Snyder makes this point that the initial event, the sensitizing event for a lot of issues we might face later, often happens super early. Like between ages 0 and 5, or maybe 5 and 10.
Wow, that early. So the foundations are laid down way back then.
Seems like it, which, loops us back perfectly to the Launchpad podcast and Jake Matthews looking into GATE.
Right, because what stood out there was this reported, weirdness around the programs and these big memory gaps.
Yeah, exactly. Could those gaps, that haziness, be related to these unconscious processes? A sign of these early, maybe unsettling experiences being logged and then suppressed?
It's a really compelling question. If Dr. Snyder's right about how the unconscious logs things, could something about the GATE activities themselves, even subtle things, have triggered that kind of memory suppression in some kids?
So let's unpack what Jake Matthews actually found about these GATE programs. He points out, first off, these weren't some tiny niche things. They were all over the US, widespread. Started way back like the 1960s. And how kids got picked. It wasn't always just about top grades. It could be kids who learned fast, sure, but also speed readers or even kids considered neurodivergent.
Neurodivergent. So potentially kids with ADHD or on the autism spectrum, that broadens the scope quite a bit. Suggests they weren't just looking for standard book smarts.
Seems like it. The scale and the varied criteria hint that maybe there was this larger national interest in identifying certain types of minds, maybe?
It's plausible.
Yeah.
But the core thing, the real head scratcher Jake keeps coming back to, is this huge gap in memory. So many people just can't recall much about their time in GATE.
Right. Not just forgetting little details, but like whole chunks of time are just fuzzy or blank.
Which is odd for what was supposed to be just an educational program, wouldn't you say? Why would so many people have amnesia about that specific part of school?
Jake even talks about his own experience. He got picked for GATE, but his grades weren't anything special, which felt weird to him even then.
Okay.
And yeah, like the others, he struggles to remember the specifics. What did they do in those GATE sessions?
His own story really reinforces that maybe academic performance wasn't the only or even primary factor, hints at something else going on.
And get this, he says it wasn't until later, like external triggers happened. Hearing someone else talk about GATE on a podcast, seeing these old ESP test cards, Dr. Ryan's cards.
Oh, wow.
That bits and pieces of memory started coming back for him and for others he talked to.
So the memories weren't totally gone, maybe just locked away, needing a specific key. That fits with Snyder's idea of suppressed memories needing a trigger, doesn't it?
It really does. But wait, beyond the memory gaps, Jake mentions other stuff people reported. Recurring characteristics. And this is where it gets really peculiar.
Okay, I'm braced.
Things like unexplained scars people found later, a noticeable occipital bun, that bump on the back of the skull.
Okay, physical things.
And even a higher rate of Rh negative blood type. Now that's a genetic thing, and while some fringe ideas connected to stuff, there's no solid science there, we should say. But still, these are physical traits harder to just like misremember or imagine.
Yeah, physical commonalities are definitely harder to dismiss than subjective memories. It suggests maybe a specific type of person was being selected beyond just cognitive stuff.
Of course, Jake is quick to say, look, it's hard to tell what's a real memory, what might be a false memory created by talking about it, and what's just normal childhood stuff you forget.
That's crucial. Memory is so tricky, especially a childhood memory. It's easily influenced. You have to be careful.
Definitely. Now, the host of that podcast, Gabriel Hardy, he pipes up and says he was also in a GATE program.
Oh, really? The interviewer, too?
Yeah, which kind of adds weight, you know? It reinforces this feeling that, yeah, there are these shared kind of odd experiences happening.
It makes it less like just one person's unusual story and more like a pattern.
And then Gabriel mentions his own son is in a GATE program now. But there's not much excitement around it. It kind of mirrors his own confusion back when he was a kid. It doesn't sound like this amazing special opportunity.
So maybe the experience of being in GATE, even today, doesn't always match the label of gifted.
Okay.
Interesting.
So Jake and Gabriel discuss the kinds of activities reported. Games, sure. But also these psychological icebreakers.
Icebreakers, like team building thing.
Kind of, yeah. Could be totally innocent. But given the memory gaps and everything else, you start wondering, was there another layer? Data collection, observation.
Psychological icebreakers does sound a bit more pointed than just playing games. Suggests maybe an interest in personality, how kids react under certain conditions.
But then, the conversation takes a darker turn. Jake brings up that some people speculate about medications being used, or even hypnotherapy, possibly to suppress memories.
Whoa, okay. Medications and hypnotherapy in schools. That's, if true, that's a massive ethical red line. Intentionally messing with kids' memories.
It's deeply disturbing to think about. And this is where they connect it to history. Government interest in mind control, MK Ultra and projects like that.
Right, the timing overlaps. GATE programs started ramping up around the same era as some of that research was happening.
Yeah, the Cold War era.
Yeah.
They also mentioned the National Defense Education Act, which came after Sputnik. It linked education, especially science and tech, directly to national security.
Okay, so there's a potential context. Government seeing certain kids, maybe those with specific abilities, as assets for national security.
That seems to be the implication they explore. What were they really looking for in GATE kids? Just high IQ, or maybe something else. Psychic abilities, specific genetic markers, maybe even grooming kids for certain secret organizations.
That's heading into pretty speculative territory, but given the other weirdness.
It is. And Jake adds that people reported different tiers within GATE. Like some kids had way more unusual experiences, stranger field trips, more intense testing than others. It wasn't the same for everyone.
Tiered programs. That implies different groups, maybe different objectives for different kids, more layers to this thing.
Okay, now this is where it got personally weird for me listening, because they discussed two really specific, unsettling things that kept coming up in GATE accounts. And Gabriel, the host, said he experienced both of them.
Okay, shared anomalies beyond just the program activities themselves.
Exactly. The first one, hearing voices. Not like hallucinations apparently, but quiet mumbling, or even direct messages, often at night. Kind of scary, often dismissed by parents or doctors as imagination or maybe a phase. Gabriel said he had that as a kid.
Multiple people reporting that specific type of auditory experience. That's unusual, especially if they weren't otherwise having mental health issues.
Very unusual. And the second one, near-death experiences, NDEs. Specifically, a lot of reports of near drownings among former GATE kids.
Near drownings? That's strangely specific.
Right. Gabriel shared his own story. He nearly drowned when he was 11. And he described it as feeling really significant, almost mystical, not just a scary accident.
Wow. A statistically unlikely cluster of NDEs, particularly drownings within this group. That definitely raises eyebrows. What could possibly link GATE participation to NDEs?
No clear answer, just another strange correlation. Then Jake starts listing specific memories of GATE activities that many others corroborated, like being in a trailer for the sessions.
A trailer, not a classroom.
Often, yeah. Sometimes with the windows covered, which, feels better.
Covered windows definitely adds a layer of secrecy or something.
And playing computer games like Oregon Trail, but feeling like it wasn't just a game, more like a test, an assessment.
Okay, using games for assessment isn't unheard of. But the feeling that it was more than that is interesting.
He also mentioned timed exercises, kangaroos, construction paper stuff. Always that feeling of being watched, evaluated. And the Stroop test popped up a lot.
Ah, the Stroop test, where you read color names written in different colors. tests cognitive interference, processing speed. Yeah, that fits with assessing cognitive function.
And the sensory details are eerie, like these old clunky headphones everyone seemed to remember using.
Okay.
Jake points out they look just like the ones used for standard school hearing tests. So you could be wearing them thinking it's a hearing test, but maybe they were playing something else. Subtle messages, binaural beats, who knows?
A potential cover, using mundane equipment for possibly non-mundane purposes. Clever, if true.
Then there's the pink drink. This comes up again and again, served in little Dixie cups.
A pink drink? What was it supposed to be?
Official stories varied fluoride treatment, plaque detector fluid for dental health. But so many people remember this specific drink. It felt significant. And Jake shares an anecdote directly linking a pink drink and hypnotherapy back to MK Ultra accounts.
Okay, the pink drink is definitely one of the stranger, more consistent details, combined with the MK Ultra connection anecdote. That really fuels the speculation about substances being administered.
It does. And they talked about nap times too, but not just sleeping. Wearing headphones, getting instructions for mental exercises, chanting, visualizing a pyramid.
Wait, visualizing a pyramid while wearing headphones during nap time? That sounds less like education and more like something else entirely. Hypnosis, guided meditation.
Exactly. It hints at more esoteric stuff, maybe hypnotic techniques being used.
And the field trips weren't always typical either.
No. Planetariums, aquariums, sure.
Yeah.
But also cemeteries and reports of trips to NASA facilities.
Yeah.
A really odd mix.
Cemeteries. It's unexpected for a gifted program field trip. NASA makes a bit more sense in the context of science focus, but cemeteries.
So in the last part, they really dive into the deep end, speculatively speaking. They bring up the idea of tulpas.
Tulpas, like thought forms.
Yeah. As a possible framework for understanding some of the really bizarre shared experiences, like some people reported encountering entities. One example given was a flying pyramid with eyeballs.
Okay, flying pyramid with eyeballs.
Yeah.
So the idea is if enough people are guided to focus on the same image or idea, maybe it gains a kind of shared psychic reality.
That's the concept, essentially. A thought form that gets energized by collective focus and starts to seem autonomous. They connect the pyramid visualization, some people reported.
The one from the nap times.
Yeah. They connect that to ancient Egyptian practices supposedly used for astral projection, suggesting the pyramid wasn't random, but a specific symbol chosen for a reason.
So potentially using esoteric symbols and techniques to influence consciousness or perception, that's a wild path to go down.
It is. They mention a study, apparently, about group meditation potentially affecting reality, lending some theoretical support to the idea that collective thought can have an impact.
It's fascinating how these ideas bump up against consciousness studies and quantum physics concepts, even if it's all very speculative in this context.
Absolutely. But they circle back, acknowledging how tough it is to sort out. What's real experience? What's psychological suggestion? What's just the power of belief shaping perception? It's like a hall of mirrors.
It really is. Disentangling objective events from subjective interpretation and potential manipulation is incredibly complex here.
But they end that section stressing something important. If this stuff resonates with you, the listener, if you have those gut feelings or weird memory fragments about similar experiences, you're not alone. Your feelings are valid starting points for inquiry.
That sense of me too, even with fuzzy details, is powerful. It suggests there's something there worth exploring further.
Okay, so let's try and pull the main threads together. We've looked at how widespread these GATE programs were, this really noticeable pattern of memory gaps people have.
Significant gaps, yeah.
And these strange commonalities that keep cropping up, hearing voices, the NDEs, especially drownings, the trailers, the pink drink, the pyramid visualizations.
And we touched on the potential historical context, government research, national security interests, and these more out there connections to the unconscious mind, maybe even tulpas.
So it leaves us with this big question for you, listening right now. Considering all this, what might it suggest about memory itself? How reliable is it? And what about the influence institutions can have, maybe subtly, maybe unknowingly? Could hidden childhood experiences really shape us so profoundly?
It definitely makes you question the narratives we build about our own pasts and how much control or awareness we really have over the forces that shaped us.
Yeah. So if any of this struck a chord, if you were in a GATE program or something similar, if you have insights or memories, maybe fragmented ones, we really encourage you to share them privately or find forums where others are discussing this. Understanding this better relies on piecing together these accounts.
And maybe do your own reading too. Look into memory research, suggestibility studies, the history of some of these government programs. empower yourself with information.
It's definitely a strange, maybe unsettling topic we dove into today.
Mm.
But seeking understanding, trying to find truth, even when it's uncomfortable or weird. Oh, that's kind of the whole point, isn't it?
Ever had that feeling, like you've been sort of nudged into something, a decision maybe, that looking back just feels off?
Oh, definitely. It happens more than we probably realize. Our minds are, well, they're complex, but also predictable in some ways.
Predictable enough to be influenced.
Exactly. There are these psychological tactics, mind games, if you will, that can really shape how we think and act, often without us consciously catching on.
Okay, so that's what we're diving into. We watched this fascinating YouTube video, 60 Psychological Mind Games You Won't Believe Exist, from the Hidden Treasury channel.
60. That's quite a list.
Yeah, quite a list. But don't worry, we're not hitting all 60. Think of this as like the highlight reel. We're pulling out the really surprising ones, the techniques that give you that aha moment.
And it's not just trivia, is it? Understanding this stuff gives you a kind of psychological literacy, helps you see the dynamics at play.
Totally. We're going to talk about things like the door in the face technique. Sounds odd, I know.
And hoovering, which isn't about cleaning.
Right. And loss aversion, how we hate losing things, and even priming, just, scratching the surface, really.
So why should you, listening right now, care about these, mind games?
That's the mission here. It's about awareness. Once you can spot these techniques, maybe in a negotiation or scrolling online, even in relationships, you're more equipped.
You get to make more informed choices, more independent ones.
Exactly. So, ready to peel back the layers?
Let's do it. Where should we start? Maybe with that door in the face one. It's a classic.
Good idea. Okay, imagine this. Someone from a charity asks you for, say, a $500 donation.
Whoa, that's a big ask for most people. You probably say no.
Right, so you politely decline. But then immediately they follow up with, okay, I get it. How about just $20?
Okay, suddenly $20 feels pretty reasonable. Almost generous of you to give it.
And you're way more likely to agree. That's the door in the face. The big, likely to be rejected request makes the smaller, realer request seem much more palatable.
It taps into something called reciprocal concessions. It feels like they made a concession by lowering their ask, so you feel this little nudge, this pressure, to reciprocate by agreeing to the smaller one, like meeting them halfway.
The video had a great study example. Students were asked to volunteer, the first ask, 2 hours a week for 2 years at a juvenile detention center.
Yeah, predictably, almost everyone said no to that.
Yeah.
Huge commitment.
But then the researchers immediately ask, okay, how about just chaperoning a single one-day zoo trip?
And the agreement rate for the zoo trip shot up, right?
Tripled. Compared to asking for just the zoo trip on its own, it's the contrast.
Makes perfect sense. That massive 2-year request makes a one-day trip seem like, practically nothing.
And you see this everywhere, not just charity.
Yeah.
Salespeople, right. Start with an outrageous price.
Knowing you'll refuse, then they graciously lower it to what they actually wanted, and you feel like you won.
Exactly. Or law enforcement interrogations. Maybe they start by accusing someone of a really, really serious crime.
Then they offer a plea deal for something lesser. Compared to the initial accusation, the lesser charge feels like a way out, even if it's still serious.
But the video pointed out a darker side too, how cults or controlling relationships use this.
Right. They might demand these extreme initial sacrifices, total devotion, cutting off family.
Things that are almost impossible. Then, when the person struggles, they seem to back down, asking for something smaller.
But that smaller request was often the goal all along. The huge initial demand just makes the real target seem reasonable, like a compromise. It's quite calculated.
Okay, moving from that, let's talk about hoovering. Sounds innocent, like a vacuum cleaner.
It's named after the vacuum for a reason, but yeah, definitely not innocent. It's about sucking you back in.
Sucking you back into what, exactly?
Into a toxic relationship or dynamic, usually right when you're trying to break free. It's a manipulation tactic used to regain control.
Who uses this? The video mentioned narcissists, emotional abusers.
People who fear losing control over someone else. It's about preventing you from leaving for good.
And why does it work? It seems like you just see through it.
Well, it preys on hope. The hope that maybe, this time, things will genuinely change.
Yeah.
That they've seen the error of their ways. Manipulators know that hope is a powerful hook.
The video used Charles Manson as an example, which is chilling.
Yeah. When his family members tried to leave, he didn't always just use threats. Sometimes he'd lure them back with affection, validation.
Making them feel special, needed.
Exactly. Creating this false sense of belonging, implying the outside world wouldn't understand them like he did. It wasn't just getting them back physically, it was getting them to give up control again.
And it takes different forms, right? The video broke it down. There's the love bomb Hoover.
Right. Suddenly they're showering you with affection, making big promises, talking about the good old days, becoming that perfect version you always wanted, but only temporarily.
Just long enough to get you back. What else?
Then there's the pity Hoover. If love bombing doesn't work, they might try guilt, claiming they're depressed, sick, having a crisis.
Making you feel responsible for their well-being.
Precisely. Tapping into your empathy. They might not even ask you to come back directly, just make you feel awful if you don't help.
And if that fails?
Anger Hoover. Lashing out, blaming you, maybe trying to make you jealous by showing off how happy they are without you.
But the goal is still the same?
Yeah, it's all about getting a reaction. Any reaction keeps you emotionally hooked, keeps you engaged. It's not about moving on. It's about maintaining that connection, that control.
There's a brain science reason this works too, isn't there? Something about closure.
Absolutely. Our brains crave closure. And this cycle, the kindness, then the cruelty, then maybe kindness. Again, it's called intermittent reinforcement. It's incredibly powerful, like addiction. You keep chasing the good moments.
So how do you protect yourself from the Hoover?
First, recognize it for what it is. A control tactic, not genuine change. That strips away a lot of its power.
And then?
Block contact completely. Don't engage, don't explain, don't argue. Any response fuels it. No contact is usually the most effective way to break the cycle.
Makes sense. Okay, let's shift to something maybe less intense, but still fascinating. The Zeigarnik effect.
Ah, yes, the Zeigarnik effect. It's that funny thing our brain does. Unfinished tasks just seem to loom larger in our memory than completed ones.
Right, like you can remember exactly what you still need to do, but forget things the moment they're checked off the list.
Exactly. It's like your brain keeps a little flag on incomplete items. The name comes from Bluma Zeigarnik, a psychologist who noticed waiters remembered unpaid orders perfectly.
But forgot them as soon as the bill was paid.
Precisely. That mental tension of the incomplete task keeps it active.
And this can be weaponized. How?
Well, imagine someone deliberately leaving conversations unfinished, or promises unfulfilled, or questions unanswered.
To keep you thinking about them. Hooked. Anxious for closure.
Exactly. It keeps you mentally engaged with them, seeking that resolution they're withholding.
Advertisers are pros at this, obviously. Cliffhangers and TV shows.
The ultimate Zeigarnik effect. You have to watch the next episode to get that closure. It fuels binge watching.
But the darker side. The video mentioned toxic bosses dangling promotions.
Right. Keeping employees striving without ever quite delivering. Or narcissists disappearing mid-argument, leaving you reeling.
Or even politicians stirring up fare without offering clear solutions.
Yes, leaving the public in a state of unresolved anxiety, looking for answers. The brain just keeps chasing that missing piece, often without realizing it's being manipulated.
Keeping those mental tabs open. Exhausting. Okay, next one. Creating a sense of scarcity. We've all felt this.
Oh, absolutely. The moment something is framed as limited, exclusive, hard to get, its desirability just skyrockets.
Black Friday sales. People literally trampling each other for deals.
It's pure scarcity marketing. They manufacture the idea that supplies are dwindling to create that urgency, that feeding frenzy.
Well, why does that work so powerfully on us?
It taps into something primal. Our ancestors faced real scarcity: food, water, shelter. Limited resources meant competition, survival. That instinct is still there.
So even if it's just a limited edition sneaker.
That ancient part of our brain gets triggered. We irrationally want it more just because it's scarce, even if we don't actually need it.
Luxury brands do this deliberately right. Limited production runs.
Classic strategy. Makes the item seem more exclusive, more valuable. Social media uses it too. Exclusive content behind paywalls.
Even dating apps, the video mentioned, suggesting someone is highly sought after.
Makes them seem more desirable, paradoxically. It's perceived scarcity, not just actual limits.
But the video also touched on bigger, scarier examples, like totalitarian regimes restricting information.
Yes. Controlling access to information creates a hunger for it. Cult leaders do something similar, claiming only they have the truth, the path to salvation. The outside world is framed as dangerous, false.
So scarcity isn't just about things, it's about information, connection, truth.
Exactly. And when those fundamental needs feel scarce, people become much more vulnerable to whoever controls the supply.
And the scariest part, the video said scarcity can literally switch off our logic.
It can. The fear of missing out, the urgency. It bypasses rational thought. We just react, grab for the scarce thing without stopping to ask if we even wanted it in the first place.
Wow. Okay, briefly now, something we've probably all heard of, the placebo effect.
Right. The mind's incredible power to influence the body. Just expecting a treatment to work can actually cause real physical changes.
It's amazing. The video just posed that question to think about. How often has your expectation shaped your experience? Pain, relief, sickness, recovery.
It's a powerful reminder of that mind-body connection. Really makes you think.
Definitely. Okay, moving on to how presentation changes everything. Framing affects manipulation.
This is a big one. It's all about how the same information presented differently can lead to totally different decisions.
The yogurt example from the video was perfect. 90% fat-free sounds healthy.
Right, but contains 10% fat. Saying yogurt suddenly sounds less appealing.
It doesn't change the facts, just how we perceive the facts.
Exactly. And that shift in perception is often enough to sway our choices, sometimes significantly.
And it's used for much more serious things than yogurt, obviously. Politics.
Absolutely. The classic example.
A health policy.
Frame it as saves 200 lives, and people tend to support it.
But frame the exact same policy as 400 people will die. Suddenly, support drops, even though the outcome is identical.
It plays on our loss aversion again, partly. We focus on the negative frame more strongly.
The video also mentioned moral framing, like pro-life versus pro-choice.
Each term frames the debate positively from a particular viewpoint, making neutrality harder. It instantly colors the issue.
Making it feel right or wrong before you even analyze the details.
That's the power and the danger, how narratives get controlled. Think about news headlines.
Oh yeah. Protesters demand justice versus riot mobs wreak havoc. Same event, totally different feeling.
The language chosen frames your entire interpretation before you read the story. Media, governments, they can push agendas subtly this way.
Even in personal relationships, right? I'm sorry you feel that way versus I'm sorry for what I did.
Big difference. One takes responsibility, the other shifts it. Or someone saying, I'm just trying to help, when they're actually being controlling.
Once that frame is set, it's hard to see past it, isn't it? It shapes how you see everything else they do.
Very hard. It locks in a perception, which leads us nicely into something almost contagious. Emotional contagion exploitation.
Okay, emotional contagion, like catching a feeling.
Pretty much. It's the subconscious transfer of emotions from one person to another. You walk into a room where someone's really happy, you might start feeling lighter yourself, or if someone's anxious.
You start feeling anxious too, even if you don't know why.
Exactly. We're wired to mirror emotions. It's part of empathy, connection. We pick up on subtle cues, facial expressions, tone of voice, often without realizing it.
Like yawning. One person yawns.
And suddenly everyone feels the urge. It's that automatic mirroring. But it can be exploited.
How so?
Well, manipulators can intentionally create an emotional atmosphere to influence people. Think mass hysteria events, like the video mentioned with the Salem witch trials.
Fear spreads like wildfire.
Exactly. Or financial panics, riots,
Yeah.
even cult dynamics. When everyone around you is swept up in a strong emotion, whether it's fear or fervent belief, it's hard not to feel it too.
So a manipulator doesn't even need to give orders. They just set the mood.
Often, yes, a leader radiating confidence can make followers ignore risks. Someone feigning sadness can guilt trip you. An enthusiastic salesperson makes a product seem amazing just through their energy.
And the video said even faked emotions can trigger real responses in others.
That's the really sneaky part. They can consciously project an emotion, and you might unconsciously absorb it as genuine.
And once you're emotionally hooked.
Critical thinking tends to fade. You're operating on feeling, not logic.
Yeah.
That's why it's so powerful for rallying crowds or controlling groups.
So the advice is, if you feel a sudden strong emotion, pause and ask.
Where did this come from? Is it really mine, or am I picking it up from the environment, from someone else? A crucial moment of awareness.
Okay, related to this, let's talk about mirror neurons.
Right. These are fascinating brain cells. They fire both when you do something and when you see someone else do that same thing.
So they're key for understanding actions, intentions, empathy.
Exactly. They help us connect, understand what others are feeling or doing. But like emotional contagion, this mirroring mechanism can be weaponized.
The video used Hitler as an example again, not just his words, but how he seemed to reflect the crowd's emotions back at them.
Yes, amplifying their fears, their hopes, creating this intense emotional feedback loop. His power wasn't just logic, it was tapping into and manipulating those shared feelings, partly through mirroring.
But it happens on a smaller scale too. Salespeople, politicians.
Con artists, cult leaders.
Yeah.
Anyone trying to build rapport quickly might consciously or unconsciously mirror you, your posture, your tone, your gesture.
To make you feel like they get me.
Precisely. Your brain registers the similarity and thinks, this person is like me. They must be trustworthy. It's a shortcut to building confidence.
And the video mentioned research showing that being subtly mimicked makes you like someone more and agree with them more.
Yes. It could even be used to manufacture attraction or loyalty. An abuser might mirror intensely at the start of a relationship,
creating that perfect soulmate illusion,
and then shift to control once the bond is formed. The mirroring builds the initial trust that enables the later manipulation.
And the point about social media algorithms acting like digital mirror neurons, that was interesting.
Yeah, feeding you content that reflects your existing views. It mirrors your bubble back to you.
Strengthening biases, creating echo chambers, constant digital mirroring.
It makes it harder to see other perspectives. So protection. What did the video suggest?
Become aware of it. If someone feels like they're mirroring you too perfectly, be cautious.
And you can try to disrupt the pattern. Change your posture. Shift the topic unexpectedly.
A genuine person adapts. A manipulator might get thrown off.
That's the idea. It breaks the script they might be following.
Okay, let's talk about a very old strategy. Divide and conquer.
Classic manipulation.
Yeah.
Used for centuries. The core idea is simple. Create conflict and distrust within a group you want to control.
If they're fighting each other.
They can't unite to challenge you. The British Empire used it. Authoritarian leaders still use it.
But it happens in everyday life too. Toxic bosses pitting employees against each other.
Definitely. Or a manipulative partner isolating their significant other from friends and family by sowing discord. Narcissists often spread rumors to break up alliances around them.
It all comes down to isolation through broken trust.
Exactly. Undermine trust, and people become isolated, easier to influence individually. They might even start seeking validation from the manipulator.
And it doesn't always need huge lies, does it? The video said subtle distortions work too.
Small twists as truth, missing context, carefully timed exaggerations. They can slowly erode relationships.
Turning allies into enemies while the manipulator stays in charge. Devious.
Very. Okay, next, loss aversion. We touched on this, but it's worth focusing on.
Right. The idea that losing something hurts more than gaining something of equal value feels good.
Precisely. Losing $100 feels significantly worse than finding $100 feels good. Our brains are wired to avoid loss.
Casinos exploit this perfectly. Big celebrations for wins.
Downplaying losses. Because that pain of losing makes you want to chase it, to win it back, to avoid the finality of the loss.
And marketing. Limited time offer. Only 2 left.
Pure loss aversion. Fear of losing the opportunity. It makes you act impulsively.
The video mentioned how this works in toxic relationships too. Not the promise of gain, but the fear of losing what you have.
Even if what you have is bad. Fear of losing the relationship, security, identity, keeps people trapped.
And politically. Fear of losing rights, status, falling behind.
Hugely motivating. It's constantly used to manipulate public opinion and behavior.
So the big question the video posed was, how many decisions are really driven by fear of loss rather than hope of gain?
It's a sobering thought.
Yeah.
It makes you reevaluate your motivations. Are you moving to something positive or just away from a perceived negative?
Important distinction. Okay, priming effects. Planting subconscious seeds.
Exactly. Exposing someone to a subtle stimulus, a word, image, sound that then influences their later thoughts or actions without them realizing the connection.
Like classical music in a fancy store making you feel more sophisticated, maybe spend more.
Or an elegant font on a menu making you think the expensive dishes are higher quality. These subtle cues prime our perceptions.
The video mentioned that age experiment. People exposed to words like wrinkled or elderly actually walked slower afterwards.
Yeah, famous one. Shows how deep the subconscious priming can go. It affected their physical behavior.
Supermarkets putting flowers by the entrance, priming freshness.
Political ads repeating slogans, priming association.
And the darker side. News headlines using loaded words to set a tone before you even read the article.
Or companies calling layoffs right-sizing to prime a less negative reaction. Even in court cases, the word smashed versus hit influencing speed estimates.
It's all about setting the stage subconsciously. Okay, the halo effect. Good first impressions clouding judgment.
That's it. A positive impression in one area, like attractiveness or confidence, creates a halo that makes us assume positivity in unrelated areas.
Like assuming an attractive defendant is more likely to be innocent.
Studies suggest it happens. Our brains take shortcuts. If someone looks good or speaks well, We tend to assume they're also trustworthy, competent, maybe even morally better.
So politicians can win on charisma alone.
Sometimes. And manipulators can seem trustworthy just because they're charming, making it easier for them to deceive people. The halo blinds us to red flags.
Okay, what about lowballing? Sounds like a bad deal from the start.
It is. You get someone to agree to an initial deal based on incomplete or misleading info.
Like a great price on a car.
And only after they've committed, you reveal the hidden costs or less favorable terms. Oh, sorry, that price didn't include the mandatory.
And because you're already invested mentally, picturing yourself driving the car.
Backing out feels like a loss. So people often reluctantly agree to the worst terms. It exploits our need for consistency and our aversion to losing the effort we've already put in.
The college student study was interesting too. Agreeing to a study, then being told it's at 7 a.m.
And many still showed up. Commitment is powerful, even when the terms change after you agree. It happens in job offers, relationships, starting small, then revealing the true cost.
The danger isn't just money, it's losing control over your choices because you were hooked by an initial, incomplete offer.
Precisely. Okay, cognitive dissonance amplification. That sounds intense.
It is. Cognitive dissonance is that uncomfortable feeling when you hold two conflicting beliefs or when your actions contradict your beliefs.
Like smoking while knowing it's bad for you. That uncomfortable tension.
Right. Amplifying it means a manipulator increases that discomfort to push you to rationalize harmful situations or double down on bad beliefs.
The Heaven's Gate cult example was extreme when the spaceship didn't show up.
Instead of questioning their leader, their belief got stronger. Admitting they were wrong was too much cognitive dissonance to bear.
So they rationalized it as a test, amplified their commitment. Manipulators often do this gradually. Start with small contradictions.
Get you to compromise your values a little bit.
Then escalate. A boss pushing slightly unethical things, an abuser twisting reality bit by bit. Each time you comply to reduce the dissonance, you justify it, making the next step easier to accept.
People defending corrupt leaders or movements. Same principle.
Often, yes. Admitting you were wrong about something you invested heavily in creates huge dissonance. It's easier to double down and defend it.
Breaking free means recognizing that mental fight, that discomfort when your mind battles reality.
And creating distance to see it more clearly, asking, am I justifying this because it's right, or because admitting I'm wrong is too painful?
Okay, related to groups. Groupthink induction.
Groupthink, where the desire for harmony in a group overrides realistic thinking and dissent. Everyone wants to agree, nobody wants to rock the boat.
Like that corporate meeting example, everyone nods along with a bad plan because nobody dares to be the outlier.
Right. Maybe the leader is intimidating, or the group culture just demands consensus. Fear of conflict, fear of looking stupid. It silences critical voices.
And the consequences can be huge. Failed invasions, financial crashes, decisions where, in hindsight, the flaws were obvious.
But nobody spoke up. And the scary part is, people in the group often feel they are thinking for themselves. They don't realize how the group pressure is shaping their judgment.
Okay, confirmation bias reinforcement. We all have confirmation bias, right?
Absolutely. We naturally seek out information that confirms what we already believe and ignore or dismiss info that contradicts it. Our brains filter reality to fit our existing views.
Like two people with opposite political views watching a same news report and both feeling like it proved them right.
Classic example. They focus on different parts, interpret things differently, all to confirm their bias. Manipulators exploit this.
Ow.
Cults are masters at it. They find people with existing grievances or suspicions, then feed them only information that confirms those feelings.
Creating an echo chamber where their beliefs are constantly reinforced.
Exactly. Social media algorithms do this too, filtering your feed to show you things you already agree with. Dissenting views disappear.
Conspiracy theorists dismiss contradictory evidence as part of the cover-up, reinforcing their bias.
And in relationships, a toxic partner might feed your insecurities, twisting events to prove your fears are justified. It actively fights against you seeing the truth.
So the manipulator controls the information flow, making you think you're reaching your own conclusions.
Precisely. They guide you to confirm the beliefs they want you to hold. Very effective.
Okay, the illusion of choice. Giving options, but controlling the outcome.
Yes. Presenting a limited set of options, making you feel you're in control, but all the options lead towards the manipulator's goal.
Like a restaurant menu. You choose steak or fish, but you never considered why those were the only options presented.
Or supermarket layouts guiding you past impulse buys. Political debates framed as only two sides, limiting the perceived possibilities.
Marketing price tiers, where the middle one is designed to look like the best value.
All illusions of choice, even in relationships. Do it my way or we break up. It's presented as a choice, but it's really an ultimatum, a form of control.
The key is asking who made this list of choices in the first place.
Exactly. Real choice involves understanding the full spectrum of possibilities, not just picking from a pre-selected limited menu.
Okay, neurolinguistic programming, NLP. Sounds technical.
It's a set of techniques aiming to influence thoughts and behaviors through language and subconscious cues. There are ethical uses, therapy, communication,
And malicious uses, manipulation.
right. Things like embedded commands, slipping a suggestion into a sentence so it bypasses conscious thought. Like, you might not realize it yet, but you're starting to trust me.
Sneaky. Mirroring, we talked about copying body language to build rapport. And anchoring.
Linking an emotion to a trigger, like always using a specific touch or phrase when someone feels good, so they unconsciously associate that feeling with you.
The danger is it often works subconsciously. You don't realize you're being influenced.
Exactly. Which makes it potent for manipulators.
Okay, creating a sense of urgency. We talked about scarcity. This feels related.
Very related. Forcing immediate action by making you fear you'll miss out if you delay. Plays on loss subversion again.
Like that online store timer counting down. Sale ends in 5 minutes.
Triggers anxiety, bypasses rational thought. You just react. The War of the Worlds broadcast created mass panic through urgency.
Marketers use it constantly. Flash sales, limited offers.
With darker uses too. Cults. Act now or miss salvation. Scams. Urgent warning, your account is compromised. Political fear-mongering. We must act now before it's too late.
It rushes you, makes you suggestible. The advice.
Question the urgency. Is it real or manufactured to make you decide before you think?
Good advice. Okay, the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, the frequency illusion.
Right, that weird thing where you learn a new word or see a new car model, and suddenly it seems like it's everywhere.
It wasn't really less common before. Your brain just filters differently now.
Exactly. You're now attuned to it. Manipulators can exploit this by repeatedly, subtly introducing an idea.
So you start noticing it more, and it starts to feel like a common truth or a growing trend.
Yes. Used in marketing, political messaging, cult indoctrination, it distorts reality without feeling like manipulation, because it seems like you're the one noticing it everywhere.
So again, pause and ask, is this really more frequent, or am I just noticing it more now?
Crucial distinction. Okay, subliminal messaging. Messages below conscious awareness.
Controversial topic, its effectiveness is debated. But the idea is influencing thoughts via stimuli you don't consciously perceive.
Historical claims about hidden images and ads. Maybe ambient music setting a mood. Casino design subtly altering time perception. Priming is related here too.
It seeps into everyday life. Newsword choices, social media curation.
Even relationship dynamics. The unsettling question the video raises. How much of your thinking is truly 100% yours?
Food for thought. Okay, the foot and mouth effect. Sounds awkward.
It's about getting someone to state something positive first, like asking, how are you feeling today?
Just being polite.
Seemingly. But the study showed that getting someone to say they feel good made them more likely to agree to a later, unrelated request. Consistency again. Having just said you feel good, you want to act consistently with that positive state. Refusing the request creates dissonance.
So salespeople build rapport first, get you feeling positive.
Interrogators establish common ground. Political campaigns start with agreeable statements, ultimate later compliance more likely. Politeness doesn't equal obligation.
Good point. Okay, the power of playing dumb.
Oh.
Acting less competent to gain an advantage.
Exactly. Think Detective Columbo. Appearing harmless, confused, it lowers defenses.
People underestimate you, over-explain, reveal more.
Right. Or selective incompetence pretending you can't do something to avoid responsibility or get someone else to do it.
Socially, pretending not to understand, to dodge accountability, it can be really frustrating for the target.
And politically, I wasn't informed, I don't recall. Plausible deniability through feigned ignorance. The goal is control by being underestimated.
Okay, love bombing. Intense affection at the start.
Overwhelmingly intense. Excessive attention, praise, gifts, declarations of love very early on. It hijacks the brain's reward system, dopamine rush. Feels amazing.
Like a whirlwind romance or an instant best friend. Too good to be true.
Often, yes, because the key part is the reversal. Once you're hooked, emotionally dependent, the affection gets withdrawn.
Leaving you confused, chasing that initial high, blaming yourself.
Exactly. It creates that intermittent reinforcement cycle we talked about, like addiction, used by narcissists, cult leaders, even toxic workplaces to create intense loyalty fast. Be wary of intensity that feels rushed.
Got it. Bandwagon effect manipulation, doing things because everyone else is.
Yep. Fear of missing out, fear of being the odd one out. If it seems like lots of people believe something or are doing something, we're more likely to jump on board.
Like the Salem witch trial example, fear drove conformity.
Or financial bubbles investing just because others are. Propaganda creating the illusion of consensus.
Advertising, most popular. Social media amplifying trends. Political rallies showing big crowds.
It bypasses critical thinking. We assume the crowd knows best. Protection. Think for yourself. Don't just follow the herd.
Okay, reframing failure. Twisting mistakes to make someone feel bad.
Worse than bad, making them feel fundamentally flawed, incompetent, guilty. Not you made a mistake, but you are a mistake.
Like growing up where errors are treated as character defects, or the North Korea example, failure as betrayal.
Workplaces where minor slip-ups are framed as total incompetence. Relationships where a partner uses failures to create dependence. See, you can't manage without me.
The danger is internalizing it, believing you deserve the bad situation.
Yes. It prevents you from even trying to change things because you believe failure is inevitable for you. You have to challenge that negative frame.
Okay, gaslighting, making someone doubt their own reality.
Exactly. Denying things happen, questioning their memory, dismissing their feelings as crazy. It's systematic erosion of their perception, named after the movie Gaslight.
It starts small, then escalates, undermining their sanity bit by bit.
Often involves isolation too, cutting them off from people who could validate their reality. Eventually, the victim might start gaslighting themselves, doubting everything.
Devastating, destroys their sense of self, makes them dependent on the manipulator's version of reality.
Recognizing the pattern, the constant denial, the questioning of your sanity is the first step out.
Guilt tripping, using emotions to get what you want.
Making someone feel bad or responsible if they don't comply. Subtle sighs, passive-aggressive comments, playing the victim, I guess I just don't matter. Related to shame inducement too, making you feel bad about who you are.
Right.
It turns empathy into a weapon. Used by manipulators everywhere. Can lead to internalized guilt. Feeling constantly inadequate. Need to recognize it, question the guilt.
Okay, the contrast principle, comparisons shaping perception.
We judge things based on what we compare them to. The expensive suit makes the moderately expensive one seem like a bargain. Luxury car dealers showing the top model first. Used everywhere in sales, marketing negotiations. Darker side. Introduce a terrible policy first, so the slightly less terrible one seems acceptable. Or alternating abuse with small kindnesses. The kindness feels huge in contrast.
Fighting, it means judging things on their own merit, not just the comparison.
Awareness is key. Is this actually good value or just better than that other awful option?
Emotional blackmail, exploiting fear, guilt, obligation.
Threatening emotional consequences if you don't comply. If you really loved me, you would. If you leave, I can't survive. Pattern. Demand trigger emotion, fear, guilt. Offer relief if you comply. Mafia uses it. Abusive partners use it. Breaking free means recognizing the game, refusing to let your emotions be held hostage. It's about control, not love.
Brainwashing, radical transformation of beliefs.
Systematic psychological manipulation. Jonestown was a horrific example. Often involves isolation, destabilization, intense indoctrination, reward punishment, reinforcement. Overrides critical thinking, creates total dependence on the new worldview. Protection involves awareness, multiple perspectives, resisting emotional pressure.
Playing on insecurities, exploiting weaknesses and doubts.
Identifying what makes someone feel inadequate, then subtly poking at it to control them. Bernie Madoff exploited fear of missing out, desire for status, tactics, hints of inadequacy, withholding validation. Social media can amplify this. Used in all kinds of relationships. Clouds judgment, creates dependence. Fight back by rebuilding confidence externally.
Cultivating dependence, making someone believe they can't survive without you.
Removing options, isolation, solving problems they created, withholding resources. The victim starts believing it's their choice to stay. They feel incapable of leaving. Used by cults, abusers, totalitarian regimes, total erosion of self-sufficiency.
Triangulation and jealousy induction, bringing a third party into it.
To create tension, competition, insecurity. Mentioning others' attractiveness, comparing to exes, fabricating interest from others, or openly flirting, praising others excessively to induce jealousy. Exploits fear of replacement, need for validation. Happens in romance, work, families, politics. Makes you focus on being good enough. Fosters paranoia. Stop playing the game.
Authority bias, obeying perceived authority figures.
even against our own judgment. Milgram's experiments showed this powerfully. We trust uniforms, titles, symbols of power. Brain takes shortcuts, often combined with fear, and even the illusion of authority can work. We assume the person in charge knows best.
Mind control, systematic manipulation of thoughts, beliefs, memory.
Stanford prison experiment showed psychological erosion. Key elements: isolation, repetition, fear. Makes people want to change internally. Requires vigilance, critical thinking, diverse information sources to resist.
Cultivating a false identity, creating a persona to exploit others.
Like Frank Abagnale, Catch Me If You Can. Crafting a believable facade to gain trust. People believe what looks real enough. The illusion feeds itself. Dangerous for both victim and manipulator.
Social proof exploitation. Following the crowd assumes correctness.
If many people do it, it must be right, safe, desirable. Kitty Genevieve's bystander effect shows the dark side in action. Marketing uses most popular testimonials, online, fake reviews, bots inflating popularity, echo chambers reinforce it, can lead to bad decisions. In action, critical thinking is the antidote.
Reciprocity trap, feeling obligated to return favors.
Even unwanted or disproportionate ones.
Yeah.
Free samples nudge purchases. Unsolicited gifts create debt, creates an imbalance. Be wary of unsolicited gifts. Not every favor needs repayment.
Stockholm syndrome, positive feelings towards captors.
A survival mechanism in extreme powerlessness. Rewiring fear into attachment through small mercies, isolation, dependence. Happens in kidnappings, cults, abuse. Not weakness, but coping.
Learned helplessness, giving up after repeated failure.
Stop trying to change things, even when you can. Animal studies showed this. Powerful control tactic eliminates resistance, belief, and escape. Keeps people in bad situations. Steals hope.
Fear-mongering and anxiety induction, using fear to manipulate.
Hijacks the brain. Prioritizes safety over logic. Salem witch trials again. Used by politicians, media, bosses, partners. Makes people cling to the source of perceived safety, often the manipulator.
Memory manipulation, altering or implanting false memories.
Loftus's Lost to the Mall study showed memory is reconstructive, vulnerable to suggestion. Tactics, suggestion, reinforcement, leads to false confessions, twisted relationship narratives, attacks identity itself.
Public shaming, social disapproval as control.
Historical stocks, modern social media pylons, exploits fear of isolation, reputation damage, enforces conformity, silences dissent, even if norms are harmful.
Scapegoating, blaming others to divert attention.
Blaming an individual or group for problems they didn't solely cause. Politicians identify an enemy. Cheating partner blames paranoia. Failing CEO blames staff. Hides real issues, perpetuates injustice. Look beyond the easy target.
Seeds of self-doubt, subtle suggestions undermining worth.
Repeated negative comments disguised as concern, highlighting past mistakes. Erodes judgment ability, creates dependence on manipulators' approval, becomes ingrained.
Exploiting empathy, using compassion against someone.
Munchausen by proxy is an extreme example. Creating problems to evoke responsibility. Presenting self as only solution. Compassion fatigue. The more empathetic, the more vulnerable sometimes.
Micromanipulation, subtle tactics for control below awareness.
Foot in the door. Nonverbal cues, sighs, raised eyebrows. Casual mentions creating obligation. Advertising creating needs. Gaslighting is a form. Danger. Feels like your own thoughts, decisions. Requires self-awareness.
Exploiting the need for closure. Brain hates uncertainty.
Makes people susceptible to those offering resolution, even false ones. Obsessing over an needing explanation. Cults dangling secrets. Politicians using ambiguity. Marketing teasers leads to accepting bad answers, misinformation.
Foot in the door technique, detailed, small request paves way for large one.
Revisited. Consistency bias makes it hard to refuse larger request after agreeing to small one. Patty Hearst case example. Free trials, sales tactics. Cult recruitment uses gradual commitment. Initial yes can be the setup.
Suggestive language and hypnosis, words bypassing critical thought.
Careful phrasing, altered states implanting suggestions. Loftus's memory work again. Embedded commands, yes ladders, leading questions. Hypnosis lowers defenses. Used in marketing, politics, interrogation. How many beliefs are truly ours?
Pacing and leading, mirroring, then guiding.
Build rapport by matching, pacing, then subtly steer, leading. Used in persuasion, manipulation. Feels natural, welcomed. Leads to unconscious compliance. Cult leaders, salespeople, interrogators use it.
Anchoring bias exploitation, first piece of info dominates.
Over-relying on the initial anchor. High price watch makes medium price seem good. Used in sales, salary negotiation. Can distort reality, crime stats. Set negative baselines in relationships. question the anchor's relevance.
The Pygmalion effect, Rosenthal effect. Expectations shape performance.
High expectations improve performance, low expectations diminish it.
Yeah.
Rosenthal's bloomers study showed this. Unconscious differential treatment, dangerous. Controlling bosses, toxic partners eroding worth, societal biases.
Time constraints detailed, urgency forcing impulsive decisions.
Revisited. Exploits scarcity, FOMO, triggers stress, decision fatigue. High-end watch store pressure. Used by marketers, con artists, cults, interrogators. Scam culture thrives on it. Increases suggestibility. Pause and question the rush.
The decoy effect. Third option makes another look better.
Movie popcorn pricing example. Less attractive decoy makes target option seem superior by comparison. Used in subscriptions, products, politics. Focus on original needs. Ignore the decoy's influence.
The I.D.E.A effect. Valuing things we help create.
Effort invested inflates valuation. IKEA furniture namesake. Darker side. Cult tasks, making victim work for approval in relationships. Hard to walk away from investment. Recognize when value is inflated by effort.
The endowment effect, detailed, valuing what we own more.
Revisited. Value things we possess more than we'd pay to acquire them. Pen example. Weaponized. Free trials make you attached. Harder to give up relationships beliefs you own. Works even with awareness. Judge based on objective worth, not just possession.
Wow, okay, so as we've explored in this pretty extensive deep dive, the human mind is just. It's surprisingly susceptible to a huge range of these psychological manipulations.
Yeah, and what's really striking, like you said, is how often they operate completely under the radar.
Yeah.
Below our conscious awareness.
Hopefully this deep dive has given you, the learner, a kind of shortcut, right? A way to grasp these techniques without feeling totally buried in, well, 60 different mind games.
Absolutely, because the real power, the key takeaway here, it's just awareness.
Right. Recognizing these tactics exist, understanding roughly how they work, that's the crucial first step.
It's what allows you to start protecting yourself, making more genuinely autonomous decisions in, well, pretty much every area of life.
So maybe take a moment, think about how some of these might be playing out in your own life, in the world around you, subtly, or maybe not so subtly.
What will you be more aware of now, moving forward? That's the important question.
And if any specific technique really caught your attention or maybe felt uncomfortably familiar, definitely check out that original YouTube video from the Hidden Treasury. Or just do some digging online. There's loads more info out there.
Yeah, definitely worth exploring further if something resonated. Well, thank you for joining us on this exploration into the fascinating and sometimes, unsettling world of psychological mind games.
Thanks for diving deep with us.